Hello and welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining this Global Investigative Journalism Network webinar, which is about investigating AI audio deepfakes in elections. My name is Rowan Philp, and I am Senior Reporter at GIJN, which is the largest support and training network for watchdog journalists around the world. Please do see our extensive archive of free guides, resources, and tip sheets for investigative reporters at gijn.org. For this webinar, I would also like to remind our audience that we have live interpretation from English to Russian and Ukrainian and back. So if you would like to use these services, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of the Zoom screen and select the language you prefer. We also want to hear from you in the audience. So please send written questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to as many as we can. After the presentations from our three great speakers, GIJN's Holly Pate will join us on the screen to moderate the questions. Finally, please note that we'll be recording this session and we'll post it later on YouTube. So 2024 is a seismic year for elections around the world, not only because it will see more voters heading to the polls than at any time in history, but also because credible sources believe that autocratic governments may see elections this year as an historic opportunity to, quote, discredit democracy as a global model of governance. As you know, elections are endangered by a vast array of sophisticated digital threats, disinformation on social media above all. With the recent advent of cheap generative AI tools, fact checkers and democracy NGOs have focused mostly on video deepfakes. But an unexpected, cheaper, and potentially more damaging threat has emerged: audio deepfakes. These include AI-generated audio simulations in which a real voice is cloned by a machine learning tool to produce a fake voice message. Today, you'll hear from three leading disinformation experts who have tangled with this threat and who will share their insights and tools. So we're delighted to have with us Silas Jonathan, Digital Investigation Manager at the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development in West Africa. Also, Olga Yurkova, a disinformation investigator and co-founder of stopfake.org, an independent Ukrainian fact-check organization. And Shayan Sardarzadeh, an open source investigator and journalist at BBC Verify, where he covers fake news and disinformation on digital platforms. But first, a brief few notes from my own reporting recently on this topic for GIJN. We already know that deepfakes undermine public trust in elections with negative long-term consequences for democracies, and are also used to boost the legitimacy of illegitimate governments and policies. We've seen audio fakes attack candidates in Pakistan, India, Nigeria, Ethiopia, the US, and the UK just in the last 6 months. But can audio deepfakes actually swing a national election? Well, some experts believe one viral audio deepfake clip, supposedly of an opposition candidate's voice, did swing the parliamentary election in Slovakia to a pro-Kremlin party last year. And this had knock-on effects for the election of a pro-Kremlin president there just this past weekend. There are two other worrying aspects about the Slovakian deepfake. First, it also mimicked the voice of an investigative journalist, Monika Todova, supposedly discussing election rigging with that opposition candidate. What I thought was interesting was that Todova later told other reporters that she thought no one would believe it was really her voice on the tape. And she was stunned to discover that even many educated people in her own circle did believe it. Second, it was published and pushed on social media 48 hours before Election Day, thus limiting the media's ability to debunk it in time. This timing bore the hallmarks of a coordinated foreign disinformation campaign. And experts like Craig Silverman have warned GIJN that deepfakes are most dangerous 48 hours prior to election deadlines. And then, we've seen research, for what it's worth, that shows us that in general, more than a quarter of voters can't distinguish between real and fake voices. And that was based on much older generation tech than we have today. Worse still, it turns out that they are easier to make than video fakes and harder to detect. And they have impact. A source at the Deepfakes Rapid Response Force told me this year that they were surprised to find that 4 of the 6, quote, high impact election deepfakes they identified in 2023 were purely audio. One reason for their impact is that they are now being used for disinformation robocalls, which often target older and minority voters. And tracing the origins of these automated robocalls, I'm sorry to say, remains a blind spot to investigative reporters around the world. Next slide, please, Andrea. So some other new threats, briefly. In previous years, machine learning tools needed extensive real audio of someone's voice to be uploaded. So politicians' speeches were obviously a great target for scammers. Now, just 1 or 2 minutes can be enough for a convincing fake. In my opinion, that could mean that bureaucrats and election officials who make short announcements can now also be faked. Perhaps more ominously, there are signs that foreign bad actors and governments are preparing the ground for deepfake impact in elections. In the past few months, 6 bogus news sites appeared in America, including titles like DC Weekly and the New York News Daily, all seemingly created by remnants of Yevgeny Prigozhin's old Russian troll farms. One of these is the Miami Chronicle, and its first major story focused on, quote, a leaked audio recording of a senior US official. That supposed leak was an audio deepfake. But what's more alarming for us, I think, is that, according to experts like Darren Linville at Clemson University's Media Forensics Lab, believe these new news outlets may have been created only to boost the credibility of the deepfake clips and disinformation posts that voters will encounter on social media, according to the New York Times. The idea, I think, is that a voter might click on the hyperlink in the post, glance at the news homepage of a site with a familiar sounding media name, and conclude the audio or video clip must be real. The good news for reporters is that this threat is easier to backtrace. It's easier to trace anonymous websites and fake news sites than deepfake clips themselves. And there are some fantastic tracing tricks that you can find for tracking the secret owners of websites on gign.org. But Andrea, for time, let's skip the last section of my slides for now, because now I'd like to hand over to Silas Jonathan to orient us on the Fact Checkers Challenge and to share his recent experience with audio fakes in West Africa.
Thank you very much, Rowan, for this brilliant introduction. Indeed, this is a very crucial conversation to have at such a crucial moment, if I must say. Without wasting much time, I would just jump into my slide so that we could just run into the presentation. As we know, deepfake technology has taken the center stage in the manipulation of truth. It is making it more difficult to be able to determine what is real or not. And as you may already know, audio deepfakes are synthetically generated voices of persons, specifically using AI technology, or sometimes voice mimicking. Sometimes voice mimicking because it's not entirely sometimes dependent on AI. And it is to verify what you cannot see. Because as we know, the evidence of the rule of evidence is, has always relied on what we can see, touch, and feel. And if you ask me, this is one of the key challenge in verifying audio deepfake, because unlike video, we are able to see some features that makes the video to be deepfake or not. But when we are dealing with audio, we can say whether there are hardly pointers to pick, and that is a big threat to democracy. Yeah, audio deepfake is based on an AI. But before we even talk about audio deepfake, there is audio fakes, and audio deepfake is just a category of audio fake. Um, uh, uh, Audio fake is as old as most of the lies that we have come across in journalism. But the types of audio fakes which we have seen over time is the one that is AI generated, which we term it as a deep fake audio. This is usually comes into two ways: text to speech or speech synthesis. Where you just have an AI tool that folks just insert text and then choose a voice they want it to, and the magic happens, and then you have an output. And then voice conversion, where people just speak into the tool and it sort of gives you an output of what you are looking to get. But even before that, there has always been the non-audio fake, where we see voice mimicking. In fact, voice mimicking, there are voice mimicking acts, people call them to sort of forge voices for money, not usually to cause harm, but mostly maybe to function in other ways that the original voice cannot be accessed. And of course, we have audio replay. This is usually in phone conversations where someone speaks as if he's the actual person. That has some flair of technology, but usually is not dependent on AI. And the one that we've seen so much in the context of West Africa is the cut and join. I call it cut and join. So folks just find audio of popular person, the actual voice of someone, and they just sort of cut it and then cut pieces of it and then form an entire sentence. When you listen to it, you wouldn't even know that it's sort of a cut and join. So this is some of the things that we've seen, both in the context of AI and the non and AI production. Yeah, next slide. So what have we seen so far in terms of audio deepfakes in the context of elections in West Africa? Of course, we cannot. There are other sectors where audio deepfakes has functioned in the West African ecosystem, but these are some of the key ones that I see that are decisive, and at some point even cause some sort of trend in the country. In Nigeria, just I think on the day of the election, and an audio recording of a very popular governor in one of the states. In the audio recording, folks were saying, in the recording, he was saying that he's going to bribe the electoral to rig the election so that his candidate will win the election. That really sort of caused some conversation. And when we took the audio, we realized that it was a whole different conversation back in 2016, where pieces of his conversations were just brought together and then fixed into the new context of him trying to bribe the electoral system. And this happened just last year during Nigerian election, on the day of the election. And then another thing, another context again, another example that we've seen is that one of the presidential candidates, an audio just came out on 2 days to the elections, and even on the day of the election, they did. So sort of the key opposition person, him and his vice president to be, were planning to see how they could rig the elections just almost to the election. This was an audio, and it was so convincing that a lot of people sort of believed that it was actually true, while others didn't believe it. But as deepfakes, the controversy remains that some people would be on the other side and some people would be on the other side. But at the end, it was also like the other one. It was just a cut and joint situation where pieces of audio conversations were just brought together and forged to form a newer narrative. And there is another one about another presidential candidate who came to say that, he was speaking to a leading religious leader in Nigeria, and he was talking about that, Christians should vote for Christians in the audio. And in Nigeria is a multi-religion environment, and a lot of people sort of felt that he was aligning to push people to vote along their ethno-religious lines. The phone conversation was over a minute. I remember that time there was some media houses that even did a fact check on it and find it to be true. I remember the tool used then was, I think, Deepware. But months after I kept looking at the audio, and I'm going to show us how we came to that. I found out that it was a deep fake that was generated using AI, at least based on my findings much later. But it was after the elections. There are some arguments that because that audio came just 2 days to the election, sort of cost and limit the chances of that candidate, because most people felt that he was pushing people to vote alongside their religious lines. And then there's one we saw again in Liberia, where the leading opposition candidate, just recent election that just took place last year, we saw that the leading opposition candidate in video, first it was an audio deepfake, and then another leaked phone call came out saying that he was having ties with Russia in order to sell Liberia and cause chaos, so that the country would be in their control if he gets to win the election. When the first election took place, he lost the elections, but when there was a running up to the election, he won. So it is very difficult to sort of measure how that on the day of the election or before the election is impacting on the chances of contestants, or it's impacting on the general output of the election. But one thing is common. When you look at all these examples, you would see that it is taking the coloration of the political sphere. What it means is that it is either challenging the integrity of the electoral body, or it is pushing people to think that there is an external power coming to take over the African continent. So these are some of the key examples that we've seen. But what have we been doing so far, and how are we dealing with this? So over the past 2 years, we have been trying to explore how best can we deal with audio deepfakes. How can we verify them, and what are the things that we need to do, and how do we need to approach them? This is some of the key ways that we've outlined. I'm going to show us an example of how we dealt with one of the examples I shared earlier. One is the audio speech analysis. This is a sort of a process where the investigator or the fact checker listens to the audio on and on and on again to detect changes in the audio voice or signs of deception. And this could be the tonality and unnatural pauses. Usually, one has to expose him or herself to other audio voices of the alleged person, just so that you could take note of the changes and the flow of the person's tone. And then there's the spectrogram analysis, which I find it so useful. That is this visual representation of the audio signal. It shows the frequency of someone's voice, just like when you're listening to music and it goes up like that. And there are a lot of tools for that. I'm going to show us one that I find very useful in how it works. This is particularly very, very, very effective in dealing with audio deepfakes. And then another one is contextual and accent analysis. This is a comparative, using the voices of the alleged person to compare accents and pronunciation. Very important in the African context because we have diverse accents and way of pronunciations. Even in the same country, you have different people speaking different way, but the same language. And then there is the AI authentication tools, which sort of show, I'm sure Olga will talk more on that, which show degree of whether it is, an AI or not. Let's go to the next page. I find the next slide a bit interesting. So this is the spectrogram analysis tool. I've been using it for the past 2 years. This is not a tool that shows you the percentage or degree that something is AI or not. It is a tool that would require you to do a lot of sitting and analysis. So how does this work? If you're dealing with an alleged audio and a deepfake that you feel is a deepfake, or you have a nudge that it could be a deepfake, you need to find at least 30 to 10 other actual voice of that subject, that person. And then you would bring the alleged deepfake, and then you bring it to this tool. What it does is that it shows you the, let's move to the next stage, so that the next slide, so that you see what I mean. It shows you the frequency in the depth of the voice. So this is how it works. And like the one will be, I have to get almost 50 voices of his, and then the alleged AI. And when you look at this one by the left, the one that is very short and all, no gaps in between, the one on the left. If you look at it, you will see that there isn't any gaps or space. It is just so blurry, there isn't any gaps or space. This is what I have realized in the past 2 months when I have been subjecting audio deepfakes. Audio deepfakes of voice that have been altered seem to lack these gaps. And usually when human beings speak, there is that natural pauses that comes in it. And when I subjected a lot of actual voices of the ones I know these are actual voices of the person, the one on the right is the result I keep getting. And then the one on the left is the one when I keep testing AI, this is what I keep seeing. And the spectrogram analysis is so interesting that you can subject your analysis to and sort of present what you have and the findings you have. Of course, it's a process, but audio deepfake and the analysis of that, it is not an easy thing. It is something that requires patience. It is something that requires one to pay a lot of attention. And I find this to useful. Yes, the tool is free, and there are other versions of them online. It's just Spectrum Analyzer. There are other versions of them, but I find this one really interesting because it wasn't even created for fact checkers or for voice analysis. I just found it very useful in my work. Yeah. Yes, but what are the implications of audio deepfakes in African elections? When we started talking about this, I had to ask myself, what is the unique situations of audio deepfakes in the African context and elections? One of the things that I foresee is that audio deepfakes may become a poster child for politicians. So what it means is that people who do not want to be held accountable will say, oh, that was not me. It was an audio deepfake. It's not me. It's not my voice. It's just that so what it means is that even if it's an actual voice, even if it's an actual voice of the person, politicians have the tendency to say it wasn't me because and that makes audio deepfakes to be the poster child where people would use it just to get away from trouble. And then I see that even as we keep having the conversation of deepfakes, audio deepfakes, one of the things that would be a problem in the African context is the language-based deepfakes may be more difficult to detect because if you don't know the language, even if you're an expert, you cannot be able to determine the speech pattern or some of the altercations in the way someone is speaking. And so we need to also look at that angle. And then another thing is audio deepfakes will take the coloration of issues in African politics. African politics usually takes the coloration of ethno-religious and social polarity. So most of these audio deepfakes we see, they don't just come without a context. They come fitting into the context that is already existing, and they are not independent of what is happening. So that's why when they appear, it is very, very difficult to sort of substantiate them because they fit into the context so perfect. And then what is the way forward? What is the way forward for newsroom? Unlike videos where people share it a lot, audio deepfakes is a bit dicey. And so it is very important for newsroom to put together a crowdsourcing strategy like WhatsApp groups where people can share especially during elections, where people can share what they suspect to be audio deepfakes. You know, a hotline where people can call and say, hey, I'm seeing this audio and I think that it has a lot to do with that. I don't know. Can you help us verify? But that cannot be possible if newsrooms do not engage in setting agenda on audio deepfake. You know, we need to write more about it. We need to enlighten people about it, that there's something like that in existence. Because if we don't, nobody would even bring it to us to verify. So we need to pay more attention to it. We need to do a lot of media and information literacy to draw attention to it. And next, when it comes to audio deepfakes, analysis, what I find is that you don't rush the process. You trust the process. You don't rush the process. You trust the process because you need to listen to it a lot. You need to listen to it and pick out what is not something you just rush it like that. And lastly, the last, and thank you guys. In the next slide, I put further readings and some of the most important links that I have outlined in my statement in case you wanna read more. And yeah, and we could always talk more on that regards.
Well,
thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that great orientation, Silas. Now let's turn to Olga Yurkova, who was actually one of my primary sources for our GIJN tip story in February. So over to you, Olga.
Thank you for introduction, everyone. Hello, dear colleagues. Hello, dear participants. Thank you for having me. It's a very important topic, more relevant than ever. Audio deepfakes can pose a more significant threat than even video deepfakes because they're easier to create and cheaper to create, and fewer context clues can be detected by the naked eye. So and it's also, they also have a bigger potential for sharing, for example, in WhatsApp or Telegram chats, and analyzing them is more complicated. This takes time, even if you have voice samples and spectral analysis skills, and there is no guarantee that you will get an accurate result. So now at StopFake, we mainly thread audio as part of deepfake videos. There is a spike of video deepfakes now in Ukraine. We don't have election, as you understand. But not so much of pure audio deepfakes in the Ukrainian information space. And we often distinguish such fakes by attentive listening. Such was, for example, the fake that we recently checked. It was a crude imitation of the voice of US President Joe Biden, who allegedly recognized the invincibility of Vladimir Putin. Our fact checkers have shared the recording with several native speakers of American English, and they noticed that certain words were forged. And in many cases with video deepfakes, audio verification can be like just an additional argument to prove the fakeness of this content. So now I would like to review several tools for checking audio deepfakes. But I would like to say first that there is still no magic pill that will detect all deepfakes. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Today, it is a kind of arms race. The technologies of deepfakes are constantly being improved. And the technologies of their debunking have not yet caught up with them. But the work on their development is very active. So I believe that very soon we will see a lot of new hands-on tools. And I would like to tell you about some of the most convenient programs. Let me share my presentation with you. Many of them declare the accuracy of 19% or higher. Unfortunately, the practice has not shown this yet. It's not like statistical numbers. If we look at the situation as a whole, then it would divide. I would divide the existing tools for detection audio deepfakes into 3 categories. And the first category is created by responsible companies engaged in developing AI. That is, they develop deepfakes for many respected purposes, like voice in educational programs or movie characters or so. And to do this, they can both convert text into audio or clone someone's voice, like creating synthetic copy of voice. And at the same time, they feel responsible for the possible misuse of their products and try to prevent it. That's why they offer free tools that will allow you to detect deepfakes created by their software. And 11 Labs is one of such tools. It's free. It detects whether a particular audio clip was created using 11 Labs software. In fact, this is a good role model for other responsible AI developers, of which there are many. I hope that someday we will have a situation where a set of such tools will be on everyone's desktop. Now there are not so many of them. And so far, the scope of this tool is limited because it detects only one program. When using this tool, it is essential to understand that it only analyzes the first minute of audio. For example, if the audio is compiled from separate parts, the program will not detect a deepfake in some particular part. That is, if the audio is inconsistent, it must be divided into smaller parts. And regarding this tool, it's worth to mention that our colleagues from PolitiFact recently conducted an experiment. They verified the sensational audio fake where Biden-like voice told Democratic voters that voting in the primary only enables a Republican to elect Donald Trump again. And its creator stated that he created it using 11 Labs software in 20 minutes for $1. It was checked on the 11 Labs detection tool, and it showed that the audio clip was not generated by AI. But also we should take into account that the creator of the video of this audio could have lied. Post-truth world. Another category of tools is companies that specialized in detecting deepfakes, but provide this service for a fee. Some have a free demo options. It is a very limited number of checks, and some don't even have that option. One such tool, AI or not, is developed by American tech company Optic. In our practice, it detected deepfake content most of the time correctly, so I'd recommend it. You can use this tool for free if you don't need to check many audios. It's like sporadically activity. This tool detects AI in both audio and images. It reveals the percentage of probability of using a particular AI model, for example, Midjourney, DALL-E, or so on. It's interesting that the price and description does not specify the number of audio checks in the free plan, but there are not many of them. So this option is suitable for those who need to check audio occasionally. For $9, you can check 5 audios per month, and for $500, you can check 100 audios. And there is also the possibility of individual pricing. And the next tool I will talk about are entirely paid. Next tools, several tools, and do not have demo plans. I mentioned them because scientific studies show their high accuracy. 19% and higher. They also work very quickly and in real time. So if the amount of content to check is significant, it can be worth paying. AI voice detector not only can check audio on their website, but they also have a browser extension. The program allows you to download audio and video in all formats. Other tools work with a limited number of formats, which is not a big problem as it can be solved by converting files. The company declares that it does not store personal files. It is important if you are checking sensitive content. A helpful function is the removal of background noise. It can be an adventure if the audio contains some background music or any other sounds. And the monthly cost is $25 and the yearly one is $200. There is also an opportunity to develop solutions for companies. And Sensity AI is one of the programs whose effectiveness has been experimentally tested by researchers on various databases and has been confirmed. This method evaluates segments of audio to estimate the likelihood that they are produced by known AI speech synthesis technologies. The detector is designed to remain effective, even if the audio is edited manually by an operator. This can be script changes, punctuation changes, deliberate mispronunciations, and so on. And this technology focuses on identifying specific features typical for voices created by AI. Unfortunately, this program only works with companies on an individual basis. To try the program for free, you need to leave your contact information, including the company email. The Gmail address will not work. And the audio fake detector developed by the company Resemble AI works in the same way, more or less. It identifies tiny differences. Differences are typical for AI, so-called artifacts, which are not audible to the human ear. The Resemble Detect program has its own version of the spectrogram Silas mentioned before, which allows it to see different frequencies that can contain these artifacts. And generally, the products of this company are aimed at big business and focus on using AI to clone voices. And deepfake detector for them is a side feature. So the company has different pricing plans, and the detector function is only available in the personalized program. But you can contact the company and ask them for a demonstration. And one more such kind of tool is DuckDuckGoose. It also belongs to this series of tools and focuses on user security. So in addition to audio, there are tools also check video and images. It processes clips in seconds, declares 93% accuracy, does not store user data, and processes them in an encrypted form. It can detect fakes created by popular voice generators, such as 11 Labs, Nerf AI, Speechify, etc. And pricing is also totally custom with no demos. The third and my favorite category of tools is those developed by universities to check facts and counter the misuse of deepfakes. They are usually accessible to journalists and researchers for free. And there are several such tools, but they do not always work correctly. Our experience shows it. So I highly recommend this one, Deepfake-O-Meter, developed by the Media Forensic Lab at the University at Buffalo. It allows you to download various content, audios, photos, and videos. You can choose an AI model that will analyze this content. And I recommend choosing all models as they give different results, sometimes even the opposite. So overall, this tool produces some of the most accurate results of any available tool. It also has been verified experimentally. At the same time, the user is warned that the result is not deterministic. And you just need to register and confirm your email to use this tool for free. Once downloaded, you will receive the verdict of all of the AI models you selected in PDF format to your email. You also decide whether you want to share your data with the app. You can also guess whether you think the given content is fake or real. So we have a choice for different situations. A large media with large volumes of content to be checked, and for small ones that can only afford free tools. But in conclusion, I would like to emphasize that today our practice and expert opinions show that expert verification is the most effective tool right now. I mean that old school journalistic methods of fact-checking are still very relevant. First of all, I mean it is essential to check the context and sources. Where did, like ask yourself, where did audio first appear? It is logical. Is it logical that such an audio have been published by this particular person or organization? Who spread it, through which channels, and which opinion leaders were involved in it? And are they seen as promoting a specific point of view or political bias? The moment of publication is also critical because if some content is spread in the right place at the right time, it's also suspicious. And it's worth analyzing the text separately. Does it contain propagandistic narratives or misinformation? What words are used there? And are they typical of this person's speech? Let me give you an example from our practice. A deepfake spread in Ukraine, where the commander-in-chief of the army allegedly called for a coup d'etat. Among other things, he talked about his adjutant. There is no position of adjutant in the Ukrainian army. The commander-in-chief could not make such a mistake. I mean this kind of checking of words. In short, today it is impossible to conclude that the deepfakeness of audio based only on the results given by online tools. Only a combination of markers can be a sufficient argument. Among the elements to be checked are the similarity of the voice, intonations, characteristic words, and manner of speaking to the original person, the content of the text, which may contain clear markers of manipulation, I mentioned before, and the context and sources of origin of their content. And also a separate topic worth mentioning is the robocalls. There were a few known cases in Ukraine. For example, there were cases when the fake mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, called the mayors of Berlin, Madrid, and several other cities. The mayor of Berlin suspected a fake after about half an hour of a conversation, because the fake Klitschko asked strange questions and repeated some Russian propaganda narratives. The mayor of Madrid immediately interrupted the conversation. And we also know cases when company employees transferred money to fraudsters after calls from a fake company director. And in this case, I recommend developing specific rules for yourself and teaching them to your audience. Do not share sensitive personal or financial information over the phone, such as codes, passwords, etc. And do not make payments based on phone information. If the person pretends to be your acquaintance, ask verification question or verify the information through other channels. Thank you for your attention, and I will pass the floor to Rowan.
Well, thank you for those great suggestions, Olga, and especially for the practical and cost considerations for using these tools, which is such a big deal for under-resourced newsrooms. And so now I would like to turn the floor to the BBC's Shayan Sardarzadeh. So over to you, Shayan.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, before starting, I have to apologize for sounding a little bit weird. I'm just literally recovering from a recent bout of COVID that pretty much knocked me down for the entire weekend and yesterday. And I'm only sort of starting to get my voice back and feeling a little bit better. So if you hear me sounding really, really weird or some coughing fits in between, I really, really apologize. I know it's not great, but hey, could be worse. So you heard from the other two panelists some great tips about spotting some of these audio deepfakes and then checking them. how to verify them, what you need to do to basically find out whether they are fake or not, what type of steps you need to take. So I thought I would, rather than sort of repeating the same things that Olga and Silas did, that, you know, I could never do as well as them, I would instead focus on some actual examples of audio deepfakes, viral audio deepfakes that have popped up online and have influenced the public debate just this year. Some of them involving really, really well-known, important public figures. Because it, you know, when we're talking about these things in theory, it's not clear, like, you know, to people who are not all the time on social media or not always following the news. It's not clear, like, how does this impact me? How can this impact an outcome of an election or the political debate in a country? But when you see examples popping up more regularly these days now, it becomes a bit clearer what we're exactly talking about. So let's start from this one, which Olga actually talked about briefly. Let's take our minds back to January of this year. As we know, Americans this year will elect a new president, obviously in November. And the way it works in US elections is that the main two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, will have primaries at the beginning of the year. And then they will go to their conventions in the summer, and then they will announce their prospective nominees based on the way 50 states have voted in those primaries. Now, normally by the time we're at this stage of the year, the primary races are sort of heating up, and we're sort of anticipating who's going to win. This year, they sort of ended before they'd even started. It was already crystal clear that Donald Trump and Joe Biden were going to be the prospective nominees for the two major parties. So we can actually argue about the impact of this particular clip, but it was still important because we're talking about the President of the United States here. So New Hampshire primary in January, just before voters were basically going to cast their votes in the primary, this audio clip of Joe Biden basically started going viral online.
We know the value of voting Democratic when our votes count. It's important that you save your vote for the November election. We'll need your help in electing Democrats up and down the ticket. Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday. If you would like to be removed from future calls, please press 2 now.
Now, obviously, it's bizarre for Joe Biden to tell Democratic primary voters not to vote in the New Hampshire primary and still wait until November and vote against Donald Trump, because he was running in the New Hampshire primary. So this wasn't a particularly convincing one, but still, some people actually, according to reporting by NBC News, some people actually were sort of in two minds when they heard it. We found out later on, a month later, again, by excellent reporting by NBC News, who the source of this audio clip allegedly was. And it turned out that a rival Democratic candidate by the name of Dean Phillips, who wasn't actually aware of this at all, apparently. He and his campaign apparently were not aware of this, but somebody, an operative involved in his campaign, apparently paid a magician in New Orleans to actually create this clip, according to NBC News. And there's a line in their report that I really, really like, which is amazing. So they're quoting this guy. His name's Paul, and they're saying he told the NBC News reporter that creating the fake audio took less than 20 minutes and cost only $1, for which he was paid $150 to create it, which is quite amazing. I mean, obviously, we don't know whether this is true or whether this is something you just said to a reporter, but I can believe it, because actually creating audio deepfakes these days are not that difficult. And by the way, what was particularly convincing about that audio deepfake, despite the fact that the content was that it actually did sound like President Biden, quite a lot. Now, this is another one, again, election related, that was even on a higher scale, because on the 8th of February this year, Pakistan had a general election, and it was a very, very contentious general election. if you've been following politics in Pakistan or aware of what's been going on there in the last few years, we know that Imran Khan used to be prime minister, and then there has been a political row between him and the powerful military in there and some other political elites in Pakistan, which ended up in him, being Imran Khan, going into prison and not being able to run again for office. But his party, PTI, was still contesting the elections, and he had urged his supporters to basically send a message to the military. And the political elites were against him by sort of going out to polling stations and voting for his party and making sure that they win the election. Now, on the other hand, the other parties who are against him and also the military were also sort of fielding their own candidates. So it was a very hotly contested election. And then a day before election day, on the 7th of February, this audio clip claiming to show Imran Khan speak and address his own supporters was shared on Pakistani social media. जैसे जैसे इलेक्शन की तारीख करीब आ रही हमारी पार्टी के खिलाफ एक मुनज़्ज़म तरीके से क्रैकडाउन हो रहा है ये काम से हमारी पार्टी का निशान छीन लिया है और yeah, so I won't play all of it because it's like 1.5 minutes, but the claim was he had basically, a day before polling day, he had released this message from prison to his supporters, and he was basically telling them the military has made it impossible to have a fair election, so you should stay at home and boycott the election. Now, obviously, it could have a massive impact on the outcome of the election if he, as the leader of his party, former prime minister, was telling his supporters that you should now stay at home after telling them for weeks and weeks that they should go and vote and send a message out to the military and the political opponents. So as you can guess, this made massive news in Pakistan as soon as it came out, and apparently it came out on messaging apps. It didn't initially come out on social media. It came out on messaging apps, and then it was reposted on Facebook and X and other social media platforms. By the time it went really viral and Pakistani media started reporting on it, Imran Khan himself released a statement saying this was an audio deepfake, and he'd never released such a message at all to his supporters. He was still asking them to go out and vote. And he and his supporters were basically thinking this was their political rivals basically doing this to impact the outcome of the election. That has never been proven. That's just an allegation. It could just be somebody who doesn't like Imran Khan, who basically wanted him or his party or candidates from his party to lose doing this. But still, it was a big one, and it went really viral. And you can see a day before election, something like this going viral. You're just somebody who's an ordinary voter. You hear this, you might actually be convinced by this. Now, this is another one, and this is from November of 2023. So in November, early November, 11th of November, here in the UK, there's Remembrance Sunday, which is the day when the war dead are remembered. It is a very, very sort of important day in the United Kingdom. The monarch, along with current and former prime ministers, well, the ones who are living still, and senior politicians, members of parliament, all gather in central London to remember the dead. This year, in particular, there was quite a lot of tension in the lead up to Remembrance Sunday, because as we all know, on the 7th of October, Hamas gunmen attacked Israel and killed somewhere around 1,200 Israeli citizens. And in response, Israel launched a war in Gaza against Hamas. And at this point, we were just a few weeks into the war, and pretty much the entire world had its eyes on Gaza and what was going on there. And in London obviously has a sizable Muslim population, a significant Jewish population. It has people from pretty much all over the world with all sorts of different opinions and views. From basically the first weekend after this war began, there were protests in central London by both pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli groups. And on that Remember Sunday, there was going to be, again, a pro-Palestinian protest while Remember Sunday events were going on. And what made that one particularly contentious was that some far-right groups also said that they were going to come out and protest against pro-Palestinian protesters because they were disrespecting the memory of the dead, and they should have not protested on Remembrance Sunday. Now, just a couple of days before that weekend, this audio clip of Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor of London, and he himself is a Muslim, came out. In it, it does appear, though, as if Sadiq Khan is suggesting that the British people should prioritize the protest in solidarity with Gaza or Palestinians ahead of the events of Remembrance Sunday.
The Prime Minister meeting with Mark yesterday is a complete waste of time. The buck stops with me. Mark reports to me. I know we have Armistice Day on Saturday, but why should Londoners cancel the Palestinian March on Saturday? Why don't they have Remembrance Weekend next weekend? What's happening in Gaza is much bigger than this weekend, and it's current.
Now, again, this one, I remember as soon as it came out, we basically were thinking there's no way Sadiq Khan would have said that, because with all the tension at that particular moment ahead of the Remembrance Weekend, we were thinking for him, as the Muslim mayor of London, to say something like this would be basically fanning the flames. So we immediately contacted his office, and then we sort of chased this clip on TikTok, and we found that it had been created by a sort of a TikTok influencer who basically created these types of audio deepfakes, partly in his own words as sort of for the lols, as satire, partly to sort of, mock politicians. But again, it wasn't him. This was a pretty decent one in the sense that they got Sadiq Khan's South London accent actually pretty accurate. And the voice pretty much, I would say 80-90% sounds convincingly like Sadiq Khan. It was, again, the content of what he was saying that was pretty dubious, and you wouldn't expect him to say it. Now, these are a bit more different, and this is a video that we spotted on the night of. So as you know, on the 22nd of March, there was a terrible attack at the Crocus City Hall in Moscow while a rock concert was going on, and unfortunately dozens and dozens of people were killed and multiple people injured, and the Islamic State group, the jihadist group IS, claimed responsibility for the attack. As all of that was going on, authorities in Russia were trying to pin the blame for that attack on Ukraine. There still are, by the way. But from the moment the news of that attack started circulating around the world, we saw an effort to try and pin the blame for that attack on Ukraine, despite the fact that it only took IS a few hours to claim responsibility for it. And on that night, we saw this particular video starting to go viral on Russian Telegram. Now, the individual you're seeing in this video is Alexei Danilov, who is a top security official in Ukraine, and it is made to appear as though he is speaking about the events that just unfolded in Moscow to Ukrainian television, to two Ukrainian TV presenters, and basically he is claiming Ukraine actually was responsible for it. So let's watch it.
Чи весело сьогодні в Москві? На мою думку, дуже весело. Хочеться вірити, що такі веселощі ми будемо влаштовувати їм частіше. Все-таки братній народ, а це родичів треба частіше радувати і частіше до них у гості ходити. Значить, будемо ходити.
So he's basically saying it was lovely seeing this stuff in Moscow today. It was great, wasn't it? We're going to have to make sure we arrange something similar for them in the near future. Basically saying we were behind it, we did it. Now, again, when we saw this clip, we were wondering, first of all, IS has claimed this. Second, why would he, as a top Ukrainian security official, go on television and say, we did this? Even if they'd done it, why would he go out and say it like this? So we started searching for this, and we found that it had actually been broadcast on NTV, which is a Russian TV network, a quite major one actually, on the night of the attack. And they had published this saying this had just been aired on Ukrainian television, and you can see Alexei Danilov say, for everyone to see that Ukraine did this. They were presenting this as evidence that Ukraine was behind the terror attack in Moscow. So we went out and we tried to find videos of Danilov speaking to Ukrainian TV in the last few days. So we started searching with my colleague Olga, who's herself half Ukrainian, half Russian. We started searching on VK, on Telegram, on YouTube, on TikTok, trying to find videos of him basically talking to Ukrainian television in the last few days. And we found this particular video on the right, and you can see him wearing the exact same black shirt as you can see in the video we were talking about. So he's sat right in front of the same bookcase. And that video was uploaded to YouTube on March 19th. So we watched that video and we saw that he had not said anything like what we saw in that video that we saw previously. And also he was talking to a completely different presenter. So then we thought, okay, maybe somebody has actually taken footage of him doing this interview with footage of interviews that Ukrainian television, a Ukrainian TV channel has done with somebody else, then merged them together and used fake audio to basically make Danilov sound like he's saying, we did the attack in Moscow. And then by luck, we found the video that you see on the left on YouTube, and you can see a Ukrainian TV network is interviewing Kirill Budanov, who is the chief of military intelligence in Ukraine. And you can see the exact same two presenters wearing the exact same two suits and the exact same two background. If you compare it with the previous video, you can see them right there interviewing Budanov. So it's crystal clear that they've taken parts of the Budanov video and parts of the Danilov video, pieced them together, and they added what we believe is AI-generated audio of Danilov to make him sound like basically Ukraine was responsible for the attack in Moscow. And then this one, the final one, which I think is interesting. This is a clip that, again, it sort of went viral a couple of months ago, and it alleges to show a France 24 report that's been broadcast on television. Somebody's filming the television, and this is supposed to be a genuine France 24 report. And what this report says, a couple of months ago, President Macron of France was supposed to visit Kyiv, and he, at the very last minute, cancelled the visit because of security concerns. Now, on the day that was announced, this video came out, and this video alleges that the France 24 network has reported that President Macron actually cancelled his visit to Kyiv because there were fears among the French that he was going to be assassinated by Ukrainian intelligence.
Le président français Emmanuel Macron a été contraint d'annuler sa visite en Ukraine à la suite d'une provocation meurtrière à son encontre. Selon une source proche du Conseil national du renseignement, cette tentative a été stoppée par les services secrets français, qui ont réussi à intercepter la correspondance et les appels des participants à une provocation potentielle. Selon la source, selon l'idée des dirigeants ukrainiens, l'attaque aurait dû attirer à nouveau l'attention.
Yeah, and those are supposed to be the sort of secret messages that have been leaked that show the Ukrainian intelligence was trying to assassinate President Macron. Again, this is interesting because the video that you see is actually real. It's an actual France 24 broadcast, and that gentleman that you see is an actual France 24 news presenter. The problem is the voice that you're hearing is not real. If you actually go watch the real video of this particular broadcast, the presenter is reading something completely different. They've used the exact same video, they've just changed the audio using AI, and they're giving you a completely warped and different version of what he actually said. And the reason they do this is because it's actually much easier to use already existing video and just sort of fake the audio, but dub the fake audio on top of the existing video rather than produce AI video and also produce AI audio. That's actually much more complicated, takes much more time. So you just take something that already exists on YouTube, on TikTok, and just add a piece of AI generated audio on top of it, and you're good to go. So that's pretty much it. You can check more of our work on the BBC Verify page on the BBC News website. My email is there and my Twitter account is there. If you've got any questions, if there's anything you want to talk to me about, in particular about your own fact checking, your own reporting, more than happy to respond. Make sure you get in touch. Thank you.
And then thank you so much for those compelling examples, Cheyenne. And then our time is tight, so I'd like to hand over right away to Holly Pate for audience questions.
Thanks, Rowan, and thanks to all the panelists for your great insights here. We have a couple of questions from the audience. For Olga to start, you mentioned a few tools to help detect deepfake audio, such as 11 Labs, AI or not, etc. And our audience was wondering, what would you say is the most effective for authenticating WhatsApp audio? And which do you recommend for analyzing different languages and dialects?
Yeah, okay, right. Thank you for the question. I recommend, first of all, I recommend save any piece of audio to your computer and then work with it. It doesn't matter, is it from WhatsApp or, unfortunately, we don't know so far any tools working inside WhatsApp, so it makes sense to save it to your computer or laptop and then work with it. I recommend Deepfakeometer and AI or not. For in our practice, they shown the most accurate results. Regarding languages, as we don't deal, for some reason, we don't deal with such languages as Chinese, for example, or some dialects. So I don't have practical advice about this, but many of this paid for tools I mentioned stated that they have like a wide range of dialects and wide range of languages, like about 70 ones. So I think that maybe they have answer, but also it should be checked because we are fact checkers. But many deepfakeometer I mentioned before is also it like the main idea behind it is to detect markers of AI. So I think that maybe it can detect these markers of using AI in different languages, no matter if it's like Chinese or English or some dialect.
Great, thank you so much. That's very helpful. This question could really be posed to any of the panelists, so whoever has an answer, you can jump right in. But have any of you considered using community organization tools that centers around information, so something like Wikipedia or MediaWiki, to counter disinformation? I guess no one has.
I can answer that. Yeah, I have.
Okay,
I use anything I can. You know, when it might surprise you, hopefully not, but I'm not a smart person. There's a whole lot of things that I don't know or I have absolutely no clue about. So I would have to go when I want to sort of check the veracity of something, a claim by a politician, a public person, I will have to go and read up a lot. And in many cases, even me reading on my own is not good enough because some topics are way too complex and go way over my head. So I have to contact people who are actually intelligent, who know much, much better than me or are experts in those areas, and ask them, what do you think? Do you think this is accurate? So Yeah, pretty much. I use Wikipedia all the time. Another thing I use in sort of never mind disinformation, in sort of as part of open source reporting. Wikimapia, by the way, is an excellent tool. If you're struggling with Google Earth for whatever reason, I cannot recommend it enough.
Thank you so much. One last question, and then I'll turn it over back to Rowan, who's going to finish us off with a question to the panelists. So this question is for Silas. Once a deepfake message has gone viral, what initial steps do you recommend a journalist takes to combat disinformation that has already spread across platforms over a period of time?
Very good question. Once audio deepfake gets viral, he or whoever shared it already has achieved what he or she wants to, because that's the goal, to get it go viral. But it's one of the things that I see journalists quickly we begin to do is that we want to verify it first before we put it out. And by doing that, it takes so much time before the fact comes out. So even before the fact comes, the audio would have just gone viral and people would have believed it. I think one of the steps that I think that we should engage as journalists in this situation is to, first of all, put out reports and engage other means that, hey, something is out, you must have had it, don't rush to believe it. You know, we're working on it, and as soon as we come up with the answer, you're gonna know. We don't do that. Most times we want to get the facts before we put out there. But I think that if there is a viral audio that we strongly feel is a deep fake, or we strongly feel has some manipulation therein, I think that it is all right for us to just put a disclaimer out there to say, hey, there's something out there. You shouldn't just rush to believe or retweet it or just reshare it. But we're working on it, and once we have the results, we'll put it out there. And then secondly, if we have the results, if we have the facts, we should engage collaboration in a way that we would make it very, very wide. Because one of the things that we know is that the lie has more wings, and then the truth comes after, limping. But with effective collaboration, we can be able to, if we have the facts, with effective collaboration, we can be able to share it amongst so that we can counter the spread of that alleged deepfake. So collaboration, and then putting out a disclaimer to say, hey guys, let us watch out before we share it. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thanks so much. Rowan, back to you.
Yeah, very briefly, I wanted to note a fundamental point that Cheyenne has made, which is, that by far the best way to debunk a deepfake is to identify the scammer or the tool that made it. In just 1 minute, Cheyenne or panel, could you list 2 or 3 basic techniques that can be used to identify the people behind these fakes?
What you always want to do is basically try and find the original poster. Your key to those questions is always finding the original poster. So you see a video or an audio clip or any viral claim on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snapchat. First of all, you have to establish, is this poster actually the original source? Most of the time you will figure out they're not. They've taken the video or the audio from another platform. They're sort of reposting somebody else. They found it somewhere else, and before that, somebody else without a large following had posted it. No one had noticed it. This one, because they have a larger following, it's gone viral. So sometimes it's actually on the original source is a much more fringe platform. So the first thing I always want to do when I want to check something is to find the original poster. If I can find them, then I can ask them about the context. I can ask them when exactly they filmed this video, what was the full context of it, what time, and why they posted it, why they thought it was important to post it, and what they think of the trajectory that video that they originally posted on, say, VK, has taken to go viral on X or go viral on TikTok. So before and once you've done that, it's basically your problem solved, because you'll find most of the answers once you've identified the original poster. But that's not always possible, and that's where things get a bit more complicated.
But fundamentally, tools like Whois domain searches and network analysis on platforms.
I would say the one I always rely on, the first and foremost, is reverse search. Reverse image search is a magical tool, and I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. Try platforms like Google Lens, Yandex, TinEye, Bing. All of them pretty much are good. I mean, the sort of latest version of Google Lens is excellent. It does so many things that we sort of a few years ago didn't think were possible. So reverse search for me is always the first tool for fact checking.
Well, Cheyenne, that's a great tip. And unfortunately, folks, we have run out of time. Before we close, I would like to thank GIGN and our audience today. And a very big thank you to our speakers, Silas, Olga, and Cheyenne. Please save the date for GIGN's upcoming webinar on investigating the Israel-Hamas conflict, which will be held on April the 30th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We will share further information about the speakers later this week. But for now, the link, I believe, to register is in the chat box. And be sure to watch GIGN's Twitter feed at GIGN and website for details on future events. Once again, thank you all, and goodbye.